All right, everyone. Welcome. Okay, today, lots of changes actually. Like just today, there's actually another set of changes that we can talk about, which actually fits pretty well for the guys that are on here today. We will for sure talk about like all the recent changes with nullification and so on. But I kind of try to invite people that might have a little bit more insight when it comes to the observatories and stuff. That's kind of what I base this on, right? So to just give everyone like a super short introduction, I'm just gonna go over the guys. I think Stitch Caneland, most people are aware, he's currently running for CSM, has been running a few times. He got close a few times too. Maybe one of the few guys, the few independent guys that people might like give a chance in the race for the CSM, even though I think this year it's gonna be particularly tough, right? This year's almost impossible for an independent guy to get on unless you have like a really big group backing you up, and it's tough. But I hope you make it anyway. So he's a small or mid-scale guy. Has been very outspoken for stuff for years. And yeah, like I said, he's running for CSM right now. But like, how about you just maybe explain to people like what you do kind of on a daily basis in the game?
Yeah, for sure. So daily, I live in a wormhole, live in a C2, so it's a low-class wormhole, which has a null sec static and a C5 static. So daily basis, I'm either scanning the chain to try and find an out to somewhere to roam, whether it's low sec, null sec, or the chain itself. Most of the time, though, I'm just kind of going out through our null sec with, pretty much anything, whether it's battleships, cruisers, anything like that, to go solo roaming. But if we run into situations where, we run across the ever-present marauder, or we just need support, then, we'll get together and do small gang and fight what we can find.
All right. You know what? I always thought about like how it would be like to live in a world with a null sec static. Like I played with the thought a few times. Like I can only imagine. But yeah. And then so next on the list, Sin Alarma. He is the I would say I'm not 100% sure if you're the main FC. I'm guessing you're the main FC and leader of Unchained Alliance. It's a fairly small but growing alliance with I think 320 characters. And he also FCs for Bombers Bar, which I think is gonna be an interesting take on the Black Ops stuff and the observatories and so on. And that's probably also why you have been actually vocal about the changes a little bit, right?
Yeah, somewhat.
So, what do you do on a daily basis then?
Yeah, so Unchained Alliance is effectively the rebrand of Exit Strategy, which is the core. So it's the Australian wormhole corporation, if you like. There's definitely others, but we're sort of that one, if you like. Day-to-day basis, yeah. So definitely manage the corporation and all the fun that comes with holding those things together. Naturally, being a wormhole group and Aussie as well, we're smaller, so I tend to spread myself across a bunch of the jobs that might have dillied out or delegated out in other groups. And then, yeah, I moonlight as a Bombers Bar FC where I have a lot of fun with. That's probably where I'm more well known publicly.
All right. And then so the third guy here, Aditya Holdem, we have worked together a few times. Actually, Sin, we worked together I think twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't tell horse.
But Aditya, he is one of the FCs in Volta. Volta, who is not aware, I think everyone knows Volta. They're not the biggest alliance, but by now they're a household name, right? I would say a mid-sized alliance in today's age. Definitely not one of the big alliances, but they can hold their own. apparently you're very known for making either good or bad noises while FCing. Right? I don't know what these noises are, but like,
So
and then
yeah, so basically, my guys, I tell them whether I'm happy or whether I'm very unhappy. I'm a vocal FC, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, I guess. So everyone is always looking forward to a fleet with happy noises, and yeah, some people are not gonna are not gonna feel that great if there's angry Aditia noises.
you know, you kind of described yourself as an emotional FC, which I was like, maybe I'm the opposite of that, probably, right? Like I always think like I should maybe put more into that, but then that becomes like, if you do it, like if you try it, then like what's the point, right? You either are or you aren't, right? And I think that kind of draws people in too, right? If you get excited about stuff and you let people like know that. But yeah. So like, what do you do on a daily basis with Volta?
So we joined Volta about half a year ago. Before that, I was, I guess, the main FC and alliance leader of Trigger Happy. When we closed that down, we joined Volta as a corp, and I think I'm probably the most active day-to-day FC at the moment, where I'm just trying to go out and find us, mid-skill fights or capital kills, and escalations happening for that. So I think that is the main source of content that I tried to create for the guys. Before Trigger Happy, I actually started out way back in 2009 in Providence together with Pro God Legend and
Good old
Makaluzaria.
Provo days.
So yeah, world's very small. World for Eve's very small.
Well, I don't want to sound too negative, but it seems to be getting smaller and smaller by the day. But
That's the problem, yeah. It's part of the problem.
yeah, I mean, it kind of leads to my first question for all of you guys, actually, right? So, what's the small mid-scale life like right now? Like, do you like? Is it content everywhere, or is it a bit of a struggle right now? And why, maybe?
I mean, on our side, it's pretty dead. I mean, it does vary somewhat on time zone. I'm primarily active in like late U.S. time zone, which, if you're wandering null sec or relying on null sec statics, 80% of the time you're going to get a pretty bad static where there's just no one out or everyone's just docked up. Wormhole space has been a little bit on an uptick because of the gas changes, but again, you're chasing ventures and stuff like that, or you're dealing with roach fleets, which are just large alt battleship fleets that'll MJD the moment you show up on D-scan. So, and then when you do find content, there's a potential where things turn into marauder spam. So that's always something we got to prepare for.
Marauder spam. Like, I wouldn't have thought I'd ever hear that, right? It's like, that's a new era.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you give a ship the Varger an extra damage bonus and put 1400s on it.
Yeah, but as long
They are dying.
as long as they're in space, and I think before someone is,
You guys can hear me. They've just come out of my house. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. So you had your
perfect.
power
Yeah,
went
and yeah, but that's okay. I've got the battery right, so I should be fine. Yeah, so we've been hunting mostly in the wormhole chain, and I would agree, probably over the last 18 months, there's probably been a resurgence, probably tied to COVID a little bit, but it's work. It's still a lot of work to find stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Where was I going with my thing earlier? I lost track.
Marauders out in space.
Yeah, the Marauders out in space, but at least they're in space. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I've killed a couple. We had one that sat on our wormhole a few days ago, and I just undocked my brawling Typhoon fleet issue with torpedoes, and we blepped them pretty quick. But it's also kind of relying on people's stupidity as well. Parking your Marauder on wormholes isn't the smartest thing.
Yeah, but so do I, like, out of like how you talk about them, like, so you don't like the Marauders, and like how much do you like or dislike them?
So it's split. Like I understand the change and why CCP went for it, because as per CCP, Marauders are supposed to be first and foremost PvE ships. Which, if you looked at the previous Marauder stats, like you could, why would you ever use a Marauder before? Like you just use a Rattlesnake, which is cheaper, does more damage, can tank similarly, all that stuff. So I definitely understand the change. The main issue I think with Marauders is there's lack of counterplay to an extent, because you can't EWAR them when they're in Bastion. So when they're in Bastion, you can't EWAR them. They have like a 3,000 or 4,000 DPS tank. They do 2,000 plus damage. So as far as a small gang element goes, when you're in like a 5-6 man group and you're just roaming, you could be in frigates or whatever. There's very little chance you're going to be dealing with a Marauder that gets undocked on you. Same thing if I'm in a solo battleship. I mean, there's short of maybe a full Newt Baelgorn, there's not a whole lot that's going to deal with a Marauder solo.
Yeah. Are there any other changes that you guys think like that were lately that kind of like impacted your playstyle like a lot?
Well, for sure, Panda. So with regards to what we try to do in Volta and what we've been trying to do with my corp for the past year, if you want content, you need to position yourself in the right area, right? So for the past year, we've been friendly or not so friendly neighbors with Noros and his gang, which has been very good for content and fights on a very regular basis. The problem is, with the mobile observatories coming in, it looks like CCP has gone way past what was, I think, the original grief with cloaky camping, is that people could do it, while at work or in beds, basically 23/7. With the current change, and most people will not understand this, right? But when you're trying to create content, not based on a timer, you have to be out there finding fleets or war calls or capitals that are making a mistake, right? If people are not making a mistake, you're not going to catch them. So you have to be out there with eyes and ready to pounce with your guys. And I think a lot of people who join our fleets don't really understand how much time and effort goes into that. Now imagine, you went to the office, 8 to 5, you come back home, you're looking forward to play EVE as an FC. You log in your characters with your eyes and stagers and pipes, and you scout around areas where there might be roll call mining. All of a sudden, instead of being able to do that while keeping your sanity, just being relaxed, keeping an eye on what is happening, now you have to constantly tap for your accounts, making sure that their cloaking timer is not expiring. That is an amount of effort and concentration that I'm not really willing to put in when I'm playing a game after my serious in real life stuff is over during the day. I think that's the main issue.
Yeah, I think
I think I want to echo that point as well. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I really want to reinforce that, and it's the point about how much effort does go into that content creation. So that Rockall is going to be out; it's going to be mining, right? Whether the cloaky camper's there or not, we've seen it time and time again. They have the ridiculous panic module that allows them a counter to the cloaky camper, and now that you have to be, I guess, really, really on it, in addition to all the usual roles you do as an FC, means that they know when you're going to be around, so they can just move to another system, and it's not as easy just to follow them around. So they'll just pack up. So there's a real risk that we will just run out of the content which is dropping on those raw calls, unless you're really lucky to find one that's not paying attention to their intel.
Yeah, and so another problem is obviously there's so few rockets in space already, right? Like at the moment, like Bombers Bar, or like what I like to do, obviously.
Depends where you look.
Yeah, well, depends where you look at what time. Your time zone, right? The Australian time zone, you probably have some good luck in certain regions, right? So Veil of the Silent, you're gonna find some rockers there, right?
Yeah.
Resistant.
But yeah, I mean, that umbrella is the hardest umbrella in the game right now, right? It's actually the only one, actually. The other ones are all like, busy. So, those raw cards are kind of not, not really that engageable. So other than those, there's not a whole lot in space, right?
But it's not just that, Pando. Like you've played the game for long enough to remember that before Zkill and before Reddit, people were very, very willing to engage. I remember from the Profi days, we just hopped into our quote-unquote shield battlecruisers and shield hacks, warped in on another shield battlecruiser, shield hacks fleet, and brawled it out multiple times a day. The willingness to engage in a risky fight nowadays is very, very low because people are so afraid of being called a feeder with a battle report and being called out on Reddit as an idiot. So people are playing it very, very safe. The counter to that is to try and bamboozle people, right? Have Sino-alt spread across a region where you know that the people that are likely to run with their Munin or Ferox fleets and force them into a fight. If you're not going to force people into a fight, a lot of fights just don't happen because people are too scared to fight. That type of gameplay is pretty much impossible without a couple of good men in a corporation logging in their scouting alts and getting things organized before you organize a fleet. And I can't stress enough how painful it is, because I tried it for a day and a half, right? When the patch came out, I tried logging in my alts and just tabbing through them, making sure that they wouldn't get decloaked by an observatory. And it's soul destroying. It's just not feasible to do that on a daily basis without just going insane. You want to be able to relax while playing and not constantly rewarping, recloaking on 4 different accounts.
Yeah, so when it comes to the observatory, what I wish they'd done is start from the other side, right? So there's two extremes, I think. And I think everyone kind of at this point, whenever the discussion comes up, the observatories, it's always about the timer, the invuln timer of the cloak. So when you cloak, you get an invulnerability timer to the observatory stuff, and it's at the moment 15 minutes. I think that's the extreme low side, right? So the extreme high would be something like, let's say, 3 hours or 6 hours or something. That would be extremely high, right? So what I was thinking is, if you introduce an observatory like they did, like, why didn't they start on the extreme high side just in order to avoid hitting the wrong content, right? Why didn't they go in carefully? Instead, they go for the extreme low of 15 minutes. Basically, the statement, like, that's how I read it, is if you don't do anything for 15 minutes in this game, you're counted as inactive or AFK, which is ridiculous if you look at Eve.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, which is craziness. Yeah, and then you all three of you are content creators, so you go out and do stuff actively, but sometimes that involves like being patient, sitting there waiting with several chars, sitting there waiting, and then maybe you go AFK for a minute or like do something else, but you come back and then you check on stuff. And I think the big point is also, like, so CCP did that, but I think CCP talked to the current CSM very closely about this. That's how I actually was told, right? There was a lot of work that they got where they actually got with the observatories at the end. And I think it shows that we need other people, like other playstyles on the CSM, like a Stitch, right? That we need people that can stop this, right? And say, hey, start with an hour and then see. Instead of the 15 minutes. It's just, I
mean, I think it depends a lot on who they're listening to and how much, like, cloaky camping has been around forever and everyone's been complaining about cloaky camping forever. Personally, as a mechanic, cloaky camping is a terrible game mechanic, but it's a necessary evil because of how CCP has designed the game. as far as, so if they were going through, the millions of threads that get posted on the forums every day about Cloaky camping or Reddit or whatever, and using that as weight against CSM, they might have just went full on to the extreme on the low point just to try and get satisfaction out of what they think is the majority. And, I guess we'll see now, because they mentioned in the dev blog that they could try and make adjustments to the cloaks or, other factors to try and appease everyone, but we'll kind of see how that actually plays out.
Yeah, so Aditya pointed it out very, very much on point, I thought, which is basically saying the majority doesn't understand. They don't understand where those rocket kills come from, where those little fights come from, those opportunities. They don't just spawn and then magically someone just knew where they were. No, there's someone putting in the work. They might not always know. Some people, you can recognize who's putting what, but most of that work people never see. They never do. And 7 days a week, 3 days a week, nothing happens. But those guys are still out there. Right? Nothing happened, but those guys are still out there trying, right? And I think to just come back to the CSM point that I was trying to make is it showed that these guys are all non-content creation focused. I'm just gonna say that. Yes, there is an FC on there, Willy, but is he out there trying to daily entertain his guys? He's more busy leading an alliance and then doing the big fleets on set timers, right? So it's a different playstyle, really. And then you have Phantomite, who is not really an FC, who knows a lot, right? He really does. But is he out there trying to create content for his guys? Probably not. So it's all people that don't really get that point of view, right? Some people might just get it more than others. And then your point is absolutely valid too. Who do they listen to, right? Do they listen to that guy that then says, out of 10 guys, that one guy says, holy shit, guys, stop it, right? Do they listen to that guy? I don't know, right? Maybe 9 out of 10 want to just get rid of Cloaky campers and they don't care how, right? So,
well, I mean, and the reality is of who is being Cloaky camped at the time as well. Who's going to speak up about that compared to someone who's not being Cloaky camped? So that also kind of plays a factor, I'd imagine.
The thing is, what is interesting, right? Because I kind of understand that marriage between CCP and the CSM, because in the end, those block leaders provide are the voice for a lot of their subscriptions and provide a way for alliances like Goonswarm and Horde and Test have probably been fantastic for new player retention. The problem is, and I saw this when we were in Trig, half of Trig was ex-Goons, and they didn't have the same amount of fun of being in Goons for 3 years as in flying with Kendar for 2 months. And this game can be extremely fun, but the way that CCP is reducing the game more and more towards a grind towards bigger toys kind of game and making it safe to do that grinding, I think they're losing that special place that EVE has in most of our hearts, where you can get into situations, that are an absolute adrenaline rush. And it would be good if CCP would try to, kind of link that, the retention of new players to how to make sure that more people in their game can get to experience that rush of outnumbered PvP and PvP that is not planned 2 days, in advance, because it can be extremely fun. And I think the way that they're tweaking their game, it's taking more and more possibilities for that away.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring. Oh, sorry, Sin. Were you? I think there's a slight delay here.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I've camped for 2 years, and I'm kind of glad that it is going away. Sorry for all the animals. It's good. It is good that it's going away. It was a game style that was developed out of the current like environment, right? Like it was how you got to the targets. And if CCP does what they said they would do when they kind of alluded to this at the start of the year, where they said, "Hey, we're gonna get rid of cloaky camping, but we're going to provide hunters an opportunity to take advantage of the mistakes the prey makes." So hopefully that's coming, right? Like hopefully the CSM is holding them to those words, and hopefully CCP realizes that's what they said. Because at the moment we've removed an ability to hunt. It's not the only ability, like many people in the chat are saying, but we just need something else now because it's going to make it very, very safe to have those caps out ratting at the moment.
I would say one thing that is brought up a lot, and going into hunting and things like that, and also going back to what was mentioned earlier about when you roam systems, people just dock up. They don't want to fight. They're afraid to fight. Like I solo roam primarily. I will go out in a bellicose, go into someone's system with 20 people in local, and I warp directly to their fortizar so I can count how many people are in their fort compared to local, and almost every time everyone's docked up in their fortizar. So, everyone is scared of PvPing against, I'm bringing them brawling bellicoses. I don't think I can get any better than that for some kind of fight, and they don't want to take it. And what is the primary issue here is that they see me 3, 4, 5 jumps out. I come through a wormhole. They see me instantly pop up. Now, I don't want Blackout. Blackout, I think, was the wrong way to go about it. It should have always been tested as a delay of some kind. But local intel provides a ton of free feedback that we have no counter against. So, cloaky camping was the counter to free local intel. It was the only way to affect intel, because you would just always be in system, and eventually someone would ignore you, and then you could actually make do something.
Yeah, whenever I talk about cloaky camp, I actually say like it's not the actual issue; it's just the symptom, right? Because like if we didn't need it, we wouldn't do it. But since like certain things you can only achieve with cloaky camping, that's why it even exists. If there was the ability to actually like effectively lower someone's ADM in a system, then people would probably do that. Or like if ADMs were just like not as high in general, like ADM 6 systems, like try to flip one of those with even numbers. Like it doesn't promote a fight with even numbers. It really doesn't, right? Like if I have 100 dudes, you have 100 dudes, and it's an ADM 6 system and you defend, like what are my chances? It's so slim. So I have to bring 200 dudes just to have a shot. And then, is there going to be a fight then? 200 versus 100? In most cases, it's not. Some people are crafty enough to make it happen, right? Some like mid-scale alliances, that's where they shine, right? But it's tough. It's not easy, right? And then they bring 300, obviously, next time. But yeah.
It also depends, what do you classify, or what do you include under the classification cloaky camping? Because I think, force recons are a great ship. And people should, before this change, I would always tell people, get more force recons. The more eyes we have and the more sinos, the more fights we'll get. I don't see anything wrong with that. I won't apologize for trying to create content by having eyes and sinos in different places.
Yeah.
It's completely different from sitting in your covert ops in a system that you need to ADM to go down, trying to prevent people from ratting.
And then, so I want to come back to that point you made earlier with like Zkill and Reddit and the willingness to engage that Stitch also just like brought up again. So, do you think, I mean, I already know the answer to that one, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you think the game would be completely different without Reddit and Zkill?
100%.
And do you think there is a way that CCP could like introduce like a mechanic to get around the problem without like, because you're not gonna remove Zkill and Reddit. It's just not happening, right? Let's be honest. It's just not in our power. You could, of course, CCP could just say we remove kill mails, but that wouldn't be a good move either, right? So what would be would there be something? I think I do have like an idea that kind of gets in that direction, but maybe like do you have an idea what they could do?
I don't think you could ever get rid of Reddit, right? Like, no matter what game is out there, there's probably a Reddit or subreddit for it. So could you? I don't know. Zkill's an interesting one. Could you? I mean, don't get me wrong. I pretend I don't like my my kill board, but it's probably not a day goes by where I muse over the alliance on my green and red that populates each day. So yeah, I don't know. You could get rid of Zkill for sure. Reddit, I doubt you'd ever get rid of.
I mean, I would argue, is it really a Zkill or Reddit issue, or is it a mentality issue? Because, I mean, we lose ships all the time, and, our corp, and no one cares. Like, we'll whelp some nightmares if it gets us a fight. But we don't have anyone in our corp that's saying, hey, stop losing nightmares. It makes us look bad. So is this, is this a mentality issue for certain people, or is this a Zkill issue? Like, Zkill has its own issues, but I don't know if it creates this mentality, or if it's penny pinchers and certain corps that say, oh, stop doing that, it makes us look bad, or it costs us money, or something like that.
I think that you're right. It is a mentality issue, and Zkill is never going to go away. Probably the closest you're going to get to a solution is to try and keep, as an alliance leader, try to keep your FCs out of as many Discord channels as possible. Discord is the main reason, probably. Discord trolling is the main reason that people are cowards in this game. Just leave all your Discord channels and the game will be better. I can almost guarantee it.
You know what? It is interesting when I think it was Forward and Killer Bee. When I had those two on, we talked about that also extensively, that the game changed when Discord really showed up. Because if you think back before Discord, every alliance had their own little tools. Some used Jabber, some used IRC, some used whatever, right? But nobody was like so interconnected that you could just say like, oh, I want to talk to this and this hostile FC and just look it up. Like I can contact you guys. I don't even have to add you or whatever. I can find you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now everyone can talk to everyone, and they do, right? So it changed, like, the hostility, like these old grudges that people talk about. They're kind of removed, not removed entirely. Obviously, we're kind of in a grudge war right now. It feels like, but it's way more rare, definitely, right? And it's way easier for. I mean, it's also a time thing. What people need to understand also, it's such an old game that most players in an alliance have been on the other side before. Not most, but like a lot of them, right? Like 20% of my people in Fleet have been maybe with some Legacy Alliance or some Panther Alliance before. So like for them to then just go and like, I don't know, hate the other side, they're like, yeah, well, there was a lot of good dudes there too, right? So from a human perspective, it's kind of nice that everyone gets like along a little bit, but from a game perspective, that doesn't make for exciting wars for sure.
Like just as an example, right? I didn't see the battle report yet, but like Wolves in Volta just defended some structure outside of far away from our staging in a stationary comp. And no capitals were dropped to kill us. And it should have been easily possible. People are just so risk averse in this game, man. It's sad.
Yeah, well.
Do you think that's the cost of capitals now? Or has this been happening before those recent indie changes with the risk aversion?
I would say that I was seeing a drop off on capitals even before the industry changes. It's just the industry changes made it a lot more pronounced, because now your dread is, your typical high angle dread back in the day was 2 or 3 bill. Now it's what, like 7, 8 bill or something like that right now. So like, why would anyone want to drop a high angle dread on your roaming gang when a marauder can, do it just as well and cheaper?
I feel like I have to shout out.
Yeah.
have to shout out Snuff at this point, dropping that Commodore with a like. I'm glad I could see a dread bomb again. You know what I mean? Like I saw it, I'm like, oh yes, a dread bomb. Like, do you guys remember what a dread bomb is like?
Right. That happened like in the last 24 hours, right? As well.
Yeah.
This morning.
Yeah, like ballers. That's
And like I think another issue that compounds this is the rebalancing of Null Sec, which is like they're to an extent they can, depending on the dynamic bounty system, pulling money away from Null Sec. So when we roam Null Sec, people are making less ISK potentially, at least on the individual player. So they have to rat more, which pretty much everyone knows Eve ratting is soul crushing. So they don't want to rat for 3 hours to, make up for a ship loss because they engaged a random gang. So they'd rather just dock up and just avoid it and wait for them to go away, and then they'll go back to, doing whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very legit point, right? Like, it's like the willingness to engage, sure, but like Care Bears, like if you are out, like if I was out making ISK right now, and whatever ship it is, let's say I'm in a carrier doing whatever havens. I don't even know what people do. Like, nobody's out in carriers reading in havens, but let's just assume, like, yeah, I wouldn't like see like, what's on D-scan? Oh yeah, I'm gonna take this fight. Like, no, I'm in a reading carrier, right? Like, of course I'm gonna whoop out.
No. Yeah, it's the same in wormholes, right? Like if you're in your PvE setup in your dreads or your marauders or whatever. I mean, if a new SIG appears, you're not like, hell yeah, I'm going to take this fight. You want to get that stuff safe.
Yeah.
So like I get the mentality.
Yeah, and so like the point I was also, or like the thing I was trying to bring up earlier was also, is it the killboard stats for sure, right? Everyone likes to look at battle reports and all that stuff, but would it maybe help if people would be a little bit more anonymous? So you would have the choice, right? You could just say like, hey, I don't want to like, I don't want to be on any killboard or whatever, especially if you just kill stuff. If you die, the guy who gets the kill mail can then maybe choose or whatever, right? But if you get on a kill mail, like maybe you say like, oh, well, I'm just a mutant, right? Just to take an example with the most probable chip type.
Well, we could all remove our Ezekiel.
I mean, would that do something? Do you think people would choose that then? If you would give them the option, saying like, hey, if you want to be anonymous, you can?
Oh, I can guarantee you there are people that do that. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like I used to make my ISK in Jita, shooting haulers, and it's in my interest. It wasn't my interest to not show my kills on Zico, to not get attention that there's someone doing that. So there's guaranteed going to be people that don't post their kills to Zico.
Yeah. Well, one side effect I could see from that would also be like, for example, for Bombers Bar, if everyone is going anonymous, like that's kind of interesting, right? Because you run into that.
Yeah. I think you have bigger fleets, right? Because sometimes it's a real shame when you go to a region and a small number of the fleet are like, I'm sorry, I'm blue to this area, and it's pretty bad with the war at the moment, right? Like if you're not in the Imperium, you're pretty much blue to everyone at the moment. So you got to drop anywhere, and it's I'm not allowed to shoot this guy.
Yeah, like now imagine you could, like, everyone in your fleet could just say like, oh, I'm anonymous, and as long as they don't die, like their loss mail obviously is going to show who it is, but on a kill mail it's just going to say like, oh, random hound or whatever, right? That could just be interesting.
Interesting. I wonder how many like blue drops would be done, right? Like you get inside one of the groups and then you can just drop and just disappear.
Yeah.
Have a screenshot where you were there.
And then someone gets caught doing it, right? And then drama, I mean, for some people that's content too, right? It's like we all know it. There's some people in Eve that, that they love that shit. So it's something for everyone. That's, I mean, at least the option. I don't know how hard it would be to implement, obviously, but to give that option, I think it would make sense. and then see how people react to that, like how player behavior would change, and then maybe that leads to another thing, right? That could just go in that direction of like countering the whole like Reddit name and shame and killboard like Z-kill name and shame culture, right? That we kind of have right now.
But alliance leaders have a role here, Panda, right? What they're like, it amazes me to this after witnessing it happen, that all these big alliances have been crabbing and crabbing and crabbing and crabbing and crabbing to have a big super cap fleet and to have Titan SRP and whatever, and then the day that they use them, they jump them in to use them as bash ravens on a Keepstar. It goes horribly wrong, and it was probably, apart from the guys on your side shooting all those PanFam Titans, it was horrible. And it's something they've been waiting for years. Instead of investing all those trillions in Titans that are horrible to use, everyone who has been in a supercap fight of any size knows that it's the worst thing ever. Give your FCs a bunch of battlecruiser hulls, a bunch of hack hulls, and tell them, go fight, go learn, go have fun. It's a mentality issue that goes right up to the top, and alliance leaders are in a position to influence that, instead of just telling their FCs, please don't feed. We look bad to our friends on Discord.
Well, so I get your point.
Does that not happen? Like, don't groups go out and do those? Like, I mean, I casually watch Z-kill and the Reddit posts. Don't groups take out the T1 things and go and shoot each other and do runs, or not?
That's not really what I mean, though. Is that I don't think taking risks is encouraged. I know, like, I don't know for a fact, but it seems like the Veil of the Silent residents prefer not to fight me when I show up with a fleet, which is kind of weird, right? Someone shows up on your doorstep with a killable fleet. Go kill it. Sometimes you feed, sometimes you get some nice kills.
And you know what the advantage of having a really bad kill board is? Everyone will fight you.
Yeah, people will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, if you want to get a fight in Veil of Silent, come on a Bombers Bar fleet. I will guarantee within 6-7 minutes a fleet will be on us.
So, I mean, no matter who, in Veil of the Silent, there's going to be a fleet on you very, very quickly. It's like, it doesn't matter what ticker.
So I think as far as the kill board goes, so it's interesting thinking about the kill board, but also kind of thinking on how people act and looking in the chat and how people are responding. But there was a mental shift in EVE around 2015, which is when we had all the capital changes, citadels were released, we went through farms and fields, all those kind of changes that CCP released that focused primarily on the null blocks, the industrials, and the empire builders, essentially. If you're on the small gang side during that time from 2015 to 2019, those were really hard times as a small gang, because capitals could blap you. They could appear anywhere. Every Gnosis and Dominix had a Sino on it. You couldn't really do anything to get into space or get a foothold into space because everyone had max projection. And what happened is that you saw a lot of small groups leave the game, or they just got absorbed by the null blocks. A lot of the people who spent their time PvPing every day gave up. They're like, and what's the point of me going and spending time on this game when I'm just going to get sinoed on and get blapped? So what happened is you kind of get a power vacuum where you have a lot of PvP players exiting the game, and now you have a lot of PvE people coming into the game. And Null Sec was set up to say, hey, we're going to give you all the tools to make as much money as you want. You can scale Rorks forever. And now CCP is kind of backing off on that. And they're saying, hey, let's PvP again. But now the general mentality of a lot of players is, I don't want to PvP. I don't want to get shot. I don't want to engage in things because it'll make me look bad. So deleting Z-kill, I don't think will change that. People are still going to be like, well, I just don't want to PvP, or I don't want to fight. So you're kind of going to have that same issue again.
Yeah, so I think I agree. it's a mentality, but at the same time, like obviously, it also is a reality that if you deliver good fights in your crabbing systems, there's gonna be more good fights coming your way, and then there's not gonna be a whole lot of crabbing going on. So, and that's like a real incentive for them to just say, like, blue ball them, everyone go safe, don't give them anything, and just like let them pass. And that's I'm always up for good fights, but when we were in Fountain, like that's what we did too. Like if there's a gang that's like we're looking to catch them, and if we bring too much, they're gonna not engage us anyway. Might as well, like if they didn't tackle anything, just let them pass, right? It's just
right, and I mean I think that's definitely understandable. And I one thing I say a lot is I don't think the burden necessarily needs to be placed on nullsec to satisfy people's PvP. Like there's a whole other area of space that CC could be focusing on, which is low sec. They can incorporate more things into low sec to provide incentive to PvP there. Now that doesn't mean that nullsec should just be ignored and they can amass tons of ISK all they want, but there's other alternatives here than just relying completely on nullsec to provide your PvP content. Like faction warfare low sec is a really good example that when it was working again before 2015, before Citadels pretty much completely killed it, you could go out and get fights like within 5 minutes super easy. So I understand the need to defend your ratting area because people need to make ISK. But nowadays, everything is a ratting area and no one will fight.
That is an interesting point that Pandal made, right? Because it's super weird, but he's obviously right. The best way to defend your ratting space is by to not defend it. If you stay docked and your pilots are disciplined and don't get tackled, your space will be free of hostiles for the rest of eternity, right?
Yeah.
So what can CCP do? What is the problem? Because I guess why is that? What changed from hey, there's a hostile gang in our space, let's go kill them, to oh guys, stay docked because if we fight them, they might come back tomorrow. There is a mechanic there that probably CCP can tweak for the FC in that space. When he says let's go kill them, everyone thinks that's a great idea.
Well,
But it's got to be those short-term objectives, right? And so that was the concept of the ESS. Because before you would go there, and like you said, they're like, well, if we don't undock, they won't come back. And now you've got the ESS, so if you rat enough and someone does show up, they can take your stuff if you don't defend it.
But sometimes, and well, I mean, it depends on the systems, and yes, that's true. But I think there becomes a decision that's made for a lot of people when you go into the ESS, and they'll be like, "Is it worth me trying to save 40 million, but lose a 70 million ISK ship?" And they'll be like, "Oh no, it's not worth it," and they'll just stay docked. So the ESS can only do so much to generate content or generate fight, because again, we're dealing with people right now that say, I don't want a PvP in my PvP game, or the ISK involved to take this fight isn't worth the time I need to do to go and PvE that ISK back.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there with the payouts. It's just not worth it to engage, right? And you saw that at the beginning, when they were just new, people would just warp in there and like have a little bit of an ego involved, like you don't steal my ISK, even if it's 10 mil, they just warped in there and like tried. But then everyone gets wise after like 1 or 2 failures, and they're like 10 mil, like have it, like whatever, right?
Yeah, it's just not worth it. I mean, I would love a concept like that in wormholes, because it's sometimes a little bit all or nothing, right? Like there's no small-term, short-term objectives when you show up at someone's home hole other than the brawl in the hole.
Unless
So
you can catch their MTU with all their blue loot.
Would you like a wormhole ESS? Like of sorts, obviously.
I think you could look at it like something where you could know when they're going to be. Like maybe it would be timer focus. I don't know. Like I don't want to go too far into how it would work, but yeah, some sort of short-term objective you could show up, or you could do a log-off trap on, or something like that. I think that would promote more fights in home systems, because we don't have an issue getting fights in systems, but to promote the fight, like sometimes you've got to do some pretty import stuff like the eviction or the Quantum Astra, which can be quite a lot to set up.
I guess I don't know the technical solution, but there needs to be a way for visitors to your space to impact your ability to rat and mine, for the next 24-hour cycle or whatever, to provide an incentive for the residents to defend. Like currently, the incentive is do not undock. And there needs to be a mechanic that provides an incentive to the defenders to actually undock and kick you out. I think that would be key.
Just a fucking thought that I just had this second. So if it's completely ridiculous, right? I'm just giving you guys the heads up. But so what if you give people the tool, let's say like a blockade unit or a system you can drop has a ton of EHP. People have to, someone would have to come and grind it down, but there's not going to be any new sites spawning as long as that thing is in system.
Fantastic idea. I think that's a fantastic idea.
I think you were a little bit fast to say that, right? Let's think about it for a second, but I'm just putting it out there. So why do you think it's a fantastic idea? Sorry.
Because it provides the direct incentive to the defenders to be organized and go kill it. Otherwise, they will not be able to do what they prefer to do when they're logged into Eve. Obviously,
it would have to be short term, though, right? Sorry, because you don't want someone showing up exactly on downtime or whatever, or in and out of time zone and dropping it, because that would be unfair on someone else that does want to get home from work and rad, right? So it'd have to be like these new mobile structures that only last an hour or 90 minutes or whatever.
So I don't know. So I think if you go with an hour, I think you would have the same situation that people wouldn't go and kill it because they're like, well, you're wasting your time too. But if you give it like a bunch of EHP, and you can put it into several systems, and let's say like a span like one time zone, let's say it's going to be like 5-6 hours, right? So this thing is going to be there for today in your time zone. If that's dropped for this specific time zone, let's say it's a AU time zone alliance, so I drop it at like 0800, which probably sucks for you guys. And then you would go and say like, oh shit, well, we might have to go there. So your neighbors would do that. It would be a tool to lower ADMs overall, right? Without obviously it's not manageable to like have a standing fleet up in a hostile region constantly or covering all systems anyway. But in that way, it would have EHP, so it wouldn't just fall over instantly. So people can then decide, like, do I want to risk it? Just nuke it with 50 dreads? It's instantly gone, like 5-minute cycle, or however many EHP we want to put on it, right? Like maybe 50 dreads is a little bit high. But let's say, 10 dreads for 5 minutes.
And it give like developing FCs something to go and do, right? Like, because sometimes when you get on, and I did some null sec FCing for the tiniest little while. Sometimes you get on, you're like, oh, I want to do something, but I don't know what I want to do. And I guess you could, go around removing all these from your space as your, the little white knight cavalry type concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. The concept sounds good, Ben, though. Like, there needs to be some sort of incentive to undock to defense other than let's get some kills, because obviously the incentive to get some kills is not enough.
Stitch, what do you think?
Hard to say. I mean, well, for one, from a small gang perspective, and this is more my own personal perspective, I'm kind of tired of small gang revolving around structures. Whether I don't want to shoot something for 30 minutes and no one's still undocks, and then I've just sat around shooting something for 30 minutes. I did that when I was living in Null Sec doing CTAs back in 2013, 2014, shooting old outposts. It's not particularly engaging, but. And I'm going to bring up something that I know you love to talk about, Pando, which is citadels.
Oh, no. I'm not going to say anything.
Which is, we have things already we can use to instigate a fight. We know the system works because it worked in the past, which was with outposts. You could bubble and undock. You could camp someone in their station, and either they don't do anything, or they undock and fight. Or you warp to the station at 100 and say, hey, I'm on your undock, what are you going to do about it? And people no longer have to deal with that scenario anymore because citadels can just blap you off grid and no one has to undock to even kill you. We used to have station services that you could shoot and encap and punish someone who didn't undock, for, a few days, few hours, whatever the case was. And, again, I think we talked about this last time, but the citadels had siege to shoot, but they had some kind of punishment for going into siege. Like if it was an Athenor, the laser would stop for a few hours, or if it was Raitaru or whatever, your research or building would stop for a few hours. Some kind of penalty for shooting the Rifter on the undock instead of it just being a freebie. If there was more ways we could actually interact with people on citadels without just, them never having to undock, we could have an option there to actually get engagement and content.
Well, I don't want to, like, you guys got some thought. I don't want to talk about citadels personally because I talk about that every episode. So I'm not gonna, like, everyone heard my fucking pitch about it like 100 times. So, like, you guys, what's your thought on citadels?
I don't want to talk about them either. They're the concept is okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, I mean, they're just part of the game, right? Like, they just happen. But I hate structure grinding, particularly when there's no fight like anybody. And then, trying to tell a wormhole that you're going to go and grind some structures and not get a fight, like, you get almost no one in the fleet because no one's interested in it. Yeah, I don't know.
I think one of the things that I miss from the old structures, the NPC stations, is I don't understand why you can't have the same thing with the old stations. When you warp to it at 0, there's a chance you land out of tether. I think that would make things already much more interesting. Like in the past, if you would warp a dictator or to a station, people would land out of dock range. People's carriers would die because they pressed warp to station and landed, 3 kilometers off.
Oh yeah, like 2Ks or whatever. Yeah.
And why is warping to a citadel basically insta tether? There's little things like that would already make 0-0 much more interesting.
Well, what I always thought is, why do ships that can dock in a citadel even need tether? Like, you can dock there, so if you don't want to fight, that's fine, dock up, right? And then the citadel defenses, I'm not gonna go too far to this. Oh shit, I'm slipping in here already. But the citadel defenses, that's a legit point, I think, right? Why are they active if the citadel is not getting attacked, right? So, and if you combine those two things, like now we're showing up in your staging and you have 150 dudes in system, yeah, we're sitting on your keepster undock. And if you undock subcaps, well, you're not tethered, right? So, and that's what it used to be like, right? In big stagings, that's what we used to do all the time. Like the big set, and then people get curious, they poke on, and then maybe they want to tank their little, test their little tank and stuff. Like some dudes just bumped, right? Now, like you can undock on a keepster and bump as crazy, and you're still in tether, but stuff would happen, right? Just the possibility of something happening is like all we're asking for, right? Like we're not asking for the free frags all day, every day. That would be ridiculous. But yeah.
And just to like add on to that, like hypothetically, if we just remove tether, let's just say we did it, but we didn't do anything else. If someone got tackled on the citadel, there's still the chance someone can defend them with the citadel. So it's not like on an outpost where if you got tackled on an outpost, like the outpost didn't have any defenses. You just had to rely on if people were actually logged in to come and help you.
Some outposts did. Oh, outposts. Oh, sorry. I thought of pauses.
Yeah. So, again, there's still more safety with a citadel if you remove tether than the old outposts. But I mean, I guess the main reason why they have tether is because, and I don't agree with this philosophy, is that CCP said we're going to combine posses and outposts and make citadels. So you're going to get the best of both worlds, but none of the negatives, which is what's happened.
Well, we got the opposite basically, right? I feel like we got the worst of both worlds. It was advertised differently.
Yeah, they included tether because it was supposed to function like the pos shield, where you could just sit on it and be outside, essentially.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to CCP introducing Pando's anomaly blockade units.
Maybe. Well, they seem to be, right? Like Stitch, like that's something you should be very aware of if you wanna, like if you're gonna be on the CSM at some point. They always seem to be more willing to introduce new stuff than to like significantly change old stuff. That's what I feel like adding onto stuff, adding more stuff, adding a new deployable, adding interdiction notification, right? For example, right? Like, hey, why do we keep the simple system if we can just make it super complicated, right? And you wanted a bubble-proof shuttle, like now you get a bubble-proof shuttle and bubble-proof scepters are back and like bubble-proof this and that and everything, and like this is a mod now and like there's 3 versions of this. Like why? Like why do we need all this stuff, right? I feel like, you know, that's just so CCP, right?
Yeah, I mean and obviously this is all speculation, but I mean, you know, we've had a lot of devs leave throughout the years, so who knows how well we understand the code that went into Citadels. Maybe it's just easier to add things on than go back into all the coding and
I'm pretty sure it is.
tweak it. So that's probably why you're kind of seeing that transition. Yeah, I mean,
it reminds me of
that
Simpsons meme. You know, that Simpsons meme with Principal Skinner, and he's like, "Is it me that's out of touch?" It's like, no, it's their children. That sometimes when CCP puts out stuff, it's like, surely they read the responses and they just, sometimes I wonder, do they just think that? It's like, no, the players don't know what they want. We know better. Like, yeah, sometimes I'm just not sure.
I mean, like the nullification changes.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I mean, sometimes I think they nail it. Like, but yeah, I don't know where the nullification came from. Like, I don't think anyone was talking about it anywhere. It's just like, so you guys have got this now.
So sometimes they nail it. What did you have in mind when you said that?
So I think this new blob stuff is good, right? So the stuff that came out at downtime or announced sort of at downtime, I think that's not bad, right? Like, you're going to have some choices now between the co-op ships. I think that's kind of cool.
You know what?
I mean, the buffing to the, well, so you've got you can either choose a co-op scanner that warps fast, which is good if you need to travel down wormhole chains really quick to get something, or through gates, or get across there. Or you can choose one that has a greater scanning strength, right? So now I think it's the Anathema and I want to say Buzzard, maybe. I think they're the 2 good scanners, and then the other 2, the Cheetah and the Helios, are going to be the warp fasty boys. Like, that's not bad. Like, I think that's a good change they've brought in, and I don't think anyone was asking for it.
I gotta say, I probe a lot of wormholes, and I don't honestly know what the difference is between the deviation and stuff. Like, I don't even. And I had someone in Mumble today that talked to me about like the deviation and like how it's like calculated. And I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I just like put it to the maximum if I can, and then like what exactly it does it help me that much? I don't even know, right? So
can I ask you a question, Pando?
Huh?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you be in the Imperium if wormholes didn't exist? If you had to rely on your
didn't exist, I think I'm not sure how much of a difference it would have made. I mean, for me personally, would have made a huge difference probably. So why are you exactly asking? Like, I'm guessing we would still be like in it would still be in the Imperium if I would still enjoy the game enough without wormholes, I think I would have quit without wormholes.
I guess the reason I'm asking is because my point of view is that wormholes are one of the mechanics that allow these big blocks to form, because the wormholes still exist to get content. If there were no wormholes, bluing up your neighbors would be destroying your own content.
Well.
To an
So
extent,
Why not
except
remove
for-
gates and null sec, and all you have is wormholes, and then you'll never know who your neighbor is, so you don't blue everybody.
That's a different direction, but it also works.
just make everyone a wormholer.
You could also flip that with just
That would be
remove
my wet dream,
anti-black.
but I know that it's not for everyone.
You could also flip that by removing anti-blacks, because then you can't skip systems, so you have to gate by gate to get anywhere.
Oh, now I've got another idea. All right, you guys ready? You can hack stargates, and then nobody knows where they lead, right? So, like, people that don't know the space, they're like, shit, where's this going, right? Like, is this the right gate? Do you just hack all the gates in system, and then you can't set autopilot? It might just take a long time. I don't know. Make it a fucking mini game. I don't give a shit.
So it's like a train track where you like just switch the track.
No, you jump into system, and all the stargates just say Stargate. Like, which one do you take? Like, good luck getting there. And if your entire region got hacked, tough shit. You gotta like fix it.
Just wait for RNG of getting 1DQ to Jita.
Oh no, I didn't mean you can hack it and then it's like rolling a wormhole. That would be ridiculous. Oh.
Would the gate always go the same way? It just wouldn't say it, because surely everyone would just end up with bookmarks, right? So you want to go from I don't know. I don't know null sec systems. I know 1DQ because it's on Reddit. What's next for it? Like T5 or something? Like, would they always just go to each other? Because then you just have a bookmark on each one, right? And you just know.
I don't know. I just threw it out there. It's one of my brilliant ideas.
So are Black Ops going to be used more with the changes that were announced today?
I think so.
You got to get the prey out there. Like, you got to have things to drop on, right? Like, Ishtars aren't Black Ops droppable things. They move too quick by the time you get there. So you got to get battleships out or carriers out ratting to drop them.
I think I'm going to jump in real quick here, but I think your targets of opportunity now, which we've all complained about in the past, or at least I know a lot of small gang has, is marauders. Marauders are everywhere right now, whether they're doing PvE or PvP. And there's a lot of people that are overconfident when they have some people behind them and they're marauders. And if you can sino in like 3 redeemers, full newt redeemers, you can just cap out a marauder and then you just melt it. And that's kind of another thing as far as the engagement for the new blops changes are. Let's just say, for example, you tackle a high angle dread. Granted, you're not going to see them anytime soon, but when you do see them, normally the go-to method is you jump a Baelgorn out of your wormhole, and you gate it 3 or 5 jumps to wherever the tackle is. Now, instead of boating your slow-ass Baelgorn, you're going to undock with a stealth bomber or an exploration frigate with a covert sino on it, quickly get there within a few jumps, light a sino, and you'll be able to drop your blobs battleships straight from the wormhole. So it's going to speed things up a lot more than previous tactics would. You also have like the Panther, which on paper doesn't look quite as strong, at least that's what people are thinking, but you're going to see Nano Panthers a lot now. They have a fall-off bonus and a tracking bonus, and the speed bonus is rolled into the base stats. So they're going to be able to frag a lot while still being fairly mobile.
Yeah. I think the Black Ops changes are really good, actually. And I think the Black Ops jump, that's kind of what I feel like supers should also be like, right? You could jump a
I think it'd be
fleet
pretty cool.
with your super if you jump your super, right? I think that's what like a mothership should be, right? I mean, Dark Shines actually tried to make it a thing in it, calling it motherships again. I feel like it didn't stuck really. Like, I think we're all back to calling it supers. But wouldn't that be nice, right? I think it looks cool, probably. and it probably feels a little bit more immersive. It feels probably a little bit more right. I don't know. But like, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Should we have supers with like jump? What do you even call it? So now there's a bridge, and then there's a
group jump. I don't know actually. Like there is actually a name for it in the blog, right? But I can't remember what it was.
But we're not going to use the official CCP name, right? We're going to come up with something better, of course.
Oh, like bushing instead of a micro jump.
Bushing and Zappy Boys.
Yeetiments or whatever the filament's called.
Yeeting, bushing, Zappy Boys, and
I don't need another opportunity to yeet my Titan, please.
Well, you know, that's actually another point. That's another point I wanted to bring up earlier, when I think Stitch, you said that like supers, especially in big alliances, they're also super like risk averse, and alliances don't use them and all that stuff. And obviously, there's like the game mechanics dictate that, right? Like if there was like a reason for them to field them, you know, I think they would.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
that's something. Yeah,
go ahead.
So that's something I talked to Brisk about a couple times, and I still think it's a good idea that, you know, like supers and titans, they need those special roles. Don't make them a super carrier, right? Make them something else, like add something to them. Like they have already projectors, which is pretty unique, right? Which is pretty cool. And then maybe give them the jump, give them some abilities that are just like unique, right? And then same for titans. Like give them some fucking titan like abilities, you know? For example, like that was just like one thought, is like a titan can keep open a wormhole. The mass doesn't matter then, or something, right? But you have to expose your titan to do that. Like you can, like whatever. There's like so many things you could maybe do with a titan, right? Where you could like, it's just a more unique thing, instead of this like, oh yeah, this is just like a spaceship, just better in all versions. This has more DPS, more fucking EHP, and like all that stuff. Instead,
right, and that's something that I've talked about a lot regarding capitals in general. Is I think outside of like dreads, capitals really lack a lot of like an actual defined role. Pre 2015, capitals were anti-structure and they were, you know, anti-capital. After 2015, when Citadel's released and you have damage caps on everything, like what's the point of bringing a dread to bash a Citadel because you max out DPS cap? I mean, you can use it to shoot other ships, which, you know, that's all fine and good, but there's a lot of things that can shoot other ships too that don't need to be a capital. And you know, and that goes along with your point. Like you want to see capitals able to do more things, and I agree with that. There should be roles specific to each capital that they're designed for, so that they actually have a purpose on grid and a purpose to undock them and use them, instead of just being, you know, hey, look, I'm a bigger carrier with more fighters and I do more damage. You know, it's very lazy, it seems like, in terms of how they've kind of progressed. And I also think there's probably more options for more types of capitals as well. You know, we only have, what is it, 5 capital types. You have carriers, dreads, faxes, supers, and then titans. If I got them all, I think I did. So, you know, there's some room to move around there potentially to see more different kinds of capitals filling different roles, and, you know, see what, you know, so we can get more of them out there essentially doing things that aren't just blapping subcaps.
Yep.
Forgive my ignorance. Isn't one of the issues you've got in Null Sec with the supers and the titans that when you do use them, it's either unopposed and a little bit structure grindy, or when it is opposed, like the server can't handle because it's just there's so many subcap and everything else going on in that same system. Like, isn't that an issue? Like, because everything's centered on that one point of the battle, one system, one structure.
I think the biggest issue with using supercaps, right? So literally the only way as an alliance, like for example Volta, that is, you know, clearly not the biggest supercap heavy alliance in the game, to use your supercaps without people from 4 or 5 regions away coming to kill you because you're on the field tackles is to do it around downtime. Right? Eve is just way too small. Like, if Eve were bigger, I would happily take a super cap fight against my neighbor, whether we would have the upper hand or we would be a little bit outnumbered, because I would know that it's impossible for Pando and his boys, or Hao and his boys, or PGL and his boys to come and kill my super caps. The universe is way too small. So you have to be very risk averse with armor supers, because it's too easy for people to come across the universe to kill you.
So, I mean, so I get your point with like Eve is too small. I do not agree with Eve is too small, but I get where you're coming from a super cap perspective. Yes, because if you field your supers, what usually happens is tie-dye kicks in, like Sin already said, and then once you're in tie-dye, Eve is tiny, right? Everyone can reach you before the bubble you're in even runs out. Everyone can just already reach you, right? So yes, like, so in general, I don't think like I feel like Eve is a little bit too big right now for the players we've got. But in this case, like when tie-dye kicks in, Eve is tiny, right? Like everyone can reach you, no big deal. And everyone does travel to you because they know you're stuck. That's another thing, right? If I was like 5 regions away and then someone says like, oh, we've got super caps tackled, I don't even know how many times I've heard like some weird intel and like, Pando, you have to come here, you have to do like, okay, is it actually tackled? Or do I form up, move my guys to the wormhole, and then suddenly the fucking target disappears, right? But in this case, there's a shit ton of bubbles, there's a heavy tie-dye. Yep, well, these guys are going to be tackled by the time I arrive, so yeah, that combination definitely makes it look small, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there, to be honest, right? But in those big fights, I think the big issue is also you usually don't lose a super cap fight or like cap fight in general, just like 50-50. That's never how it ends, right? One side is gonna get demolished. So it's a very simple numbers game a lot of times, especially in tie-dye. Skill plays less of a role. I'm not saying it's completely out, but it's positioning, Titan numbers, positioning, Titan numbers, positioning, Titan numbers. That's all that it is. Who has more Titans wins, right? And then if you lose and you're out in the open, well, you're gonna have a bad day. And the smaller your super cap fleet, the faster you lose all of them, obviously. And I think that's the main reason why people don't use them, right? Like if you get caught, that's gonna be the end of it. Like it can end really quickly. There you go. All right, so we are actually close to 1.5 hours. Do you guys have like another like point you really want to like bring up, or like you feel like needs to be reinforced maybe for people to understand?
I did want to touch back on mobile observatories real quick. Just as a general thought, like I really think that the covert op ships should have some kind of inherent bonus to them, especially like the exploration ships, because you can at least have something to use as a scout, something an FC can sit in that he doesn't need to babysit. And again, this is all assuming they don't change things in the future or just cloaks or whatever they're saying. But I mean, the role of a covert ops ship, I mean, it's in the name of covert ops, especially for like an exploration frigate, where it should have some kind of longer duration by default for cloaking. Now, granted, maybe people are going to be worried about getting signed on by the buzzard, but again, I think there's more ways they could adjust that to make it a little bit easier and to actually fit the role of those ships than just 15 minutes of scan immunity.
Don't you think then all the cloaky campers, right? I don't even think there's so many cloaky campers out there, to be quite honest, right? But wouldn't they all change to covered ops then? And then it would only punish non-cloaky campers, actually? right? Or it would punish them more than the cloaky campers. So that would actually be like.
And also, you've got the issue with the people talking about those the nano supers or whatever, the ones that want to delve deep into a group's territory and try and drop on things in the rear areas, because then they're going to continue getting hit with the 15 minutes, which is really hard with their jump fatigue, right, and their ability to log out versus their signature. I mean, from a law perspective, right, it would make sense, but yeah.
It's a big it's just curious. It's curious if CCP thought, did they? It would be interesting to hear from CCP whether or not these changes these impacts are intended or not. Because moving your nano super around, I would, just strongly advise against it.
Right now.
Right now you're taking such a risk. Right, the couple months ago, I jumped my system next door to Fred or my Titan next door to Fred Stager. Maybe not the smartest move in the world, but I had to get there. And within 2 minutes, there was a Hictorin system with probes out. If I had a cloak, expiration there, I would have just been dead to rights. There was a 0 chance I would get out there, and that cannot be the intended consequence from CCP to, impact so many playstyles like nano supers or bombers bar, or the ability of FCs to create content. Time will tell, but I really hope that some of this will be adjusted so that I think the goal that everyone agrees with, that you shouldn't be able to cloaky camp an active player while you're sleeping. I think everyone here agrees with that. That is silly that was possible.
Yeah.
There are ways for CCP to fix that.
And one other thing too, the main fear of a cloaky camper is a Sino, and this is something I've mentioned on other subjects, but we talk about like capital proliferation and movement projection, things like that. A lot of these things fall back to the Sino module itself. So we focus in on cloaky campers are bad, but the Proteus or whatever by himself isn't an issue. It's all his friends he brings with him. There has been no iteration on Sinos, minus them being limited to recons. So granted, there's it's not something we want to do right off the bat with no real thought input, but if there was a spool up on a Sino, and you're only if saying exploration frigates had a duration on that invulnerability period for cloaking, and they had a Sino fit, and maybe they have a long spool up, because a buzzard decloaking next to a Gila is going to get blapped pretty quickly by those Gila drones if it has to spool up for a minute to light a Sino. So there's a lot of ways you can play with this that's not just focusing on the cloak, but on the main issue that is cloaky camping, which is the Sino.
Why is that an issue? Why can't people hunt? I don't see an issue with opening a Sino and killing something. It's part of the game.
Well, I would say it would be limited to certain ships. So if we're talking about having scout ships, then scout ships, if your primary role for a scout ship is just eyes, then you don't need a Sino on it. So then that removes that ability to abuse it.
So you would split the roles then, right? So you would have the scouting ships, and you would have like the covered Sinos and stuff that's like focused on that.
Right.
I think that probably would make sense in some way, right? Obviously, it's always in the details, right?
Yeah, and obviously this is something that's thought up within while we're talking about it. Not saying it's a good idea, but I'm just saying there's other methods to address issues than just the most direct one.
Yeah. All right. Sin, you got anything to add?
Well, I mean, I could talk all day, right? I mean, I think what we say, the crocodile closest to the boat is the the CSM elections, and I mean, I really do hope that we get some non-block people in. Like, I really, really do. I mean, I'm naturally biased. Like, I want to see a wormhole rep up there, because I do think having someone that is outside of those big block groups might be able to provide that different perspective. So I think I mean, is it worth talking about? Sure, I've made the point. Yeah, I'd like to see where it goes in the next couple of weeks.
Who do you think has the biggest chance, former candidate wise?
Look, I mean, naturally, one of the gentlemen in the room is one of my favourite, and I'll probably vote for him. But I think Praise Bob did a bit of a ballot, so I think Mark has a pretty good chance of getting in. There's a bunch of wormhole dudes this year that are going for it, so I just hope we don't dilute or spread the vote too much. But yeah, I mean, Stitch would be, I think, a good rep for that small gang stuff, which, hey, Low Sec needs a lot of love at the moment as well. I don't go out there much because there's just no point a little bit. So I'd love to have more reasons to get out there.
All right. Aditya, anything to add?
No, I don't think so. It was very interesting to come on the show, Pendo, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, guys, thank you guys a lot. I thought it was actually like very insightful, especially for people who might not, read a lot about smaller scale stuff, mid-scale stuff. Reddit is full of like block stuff and 1DQ and 3-D and whatnot, right? So I think everyone needs a reminder from time to time. There's other content out there, guys. Like, you don't have to be in a block. You can just do some smaller scale stuff. And yeah, glad you guys were on, and thanks again. And for the guys on stream, thanks for hanging out. And I'm gonna have a look who we can host, and I'd say we see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.
Cheers, mate.